Good evening, everybody. Is everybody okay to start the meeting? Yes? Brilliant. Thank you very much. I'd like to say good evening, as it's evening time now, and welcome to the Housing and Community Services Scrutiny Panel. Before we start this proceedings, may I just bring your attention to some basic housekeeping matters. You've probably heard this 1,000 times over. There is no expected fire alarm today, so if it goes off, it's going to be as much news to me as it would be to you. Therefore, if a fire alarm does sound, please follow the fire emergency procedures and are applicable in Council House and leave via the closest safe exit and convene outside the court area. Everybody can hear me okay, yes? And good. This meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of subsequent repeated viewing. By entering this Warspite room and during the course of this meeting, committee members are consenting to being filmed and the use of recordings for webcasting. Has anybody got a problem with any of that? No? Can I also ask you to speak clearly and directly into your microphone when addressing the meeting so that the online participants and the public can hear, and that is switched off when you're not using it. And also all mobile phones to be put to silent, please. Can I quickly whip around the room and everybody just introduce themselves, just to break the ice a little bit and start off with Angie. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Angie Smith, and I'm a councillor for the Chadwood ward.
Good afternoon. I'm Grace Stickland, and I'm councillor for Plymouth Council ward.
Afternoon, my name is Sahi and I'm a councillor for Drake.
Afternoon, my name is Anne Freeman, I'm councillor for Devonport ward.
Lewis Allison, councillor for St Peter's on the Waterfront.
Mark Coker, Devonport ward.
Sally Creswell, I'm the councillor for Stoke ward.
Chris Cudahy, South Sutton and Mount Gould.
John Dingle, councillor for St Buda ward.
Chris Penberthy, councillor for St Peter's, and here for the first of your items, which includes a cabinet member.
Good afternoon, everyone. Elliot Warren Gould, Principal Democratic Governance and Scrutiny Officer.
Hi, I'm Charlie Atkinson. I'm also a Principal Democratic Governance and Scrutiny Officer.
And Gary Walbridge, the Council's Strategic Director for Adults, Health and Communities.
Thank you very much for everybody introducing themselves. I don't know all of you, and I certainly don't know you all personally, but I'd really hope to change that in the near future. We're all here for the common denominator. We're all here to serve people of Plymouth, and I would love at some point to be able to interject with you all and get to know you a little bit better. So I do know a couple of the councillors that are here, but obviously not all of them. But that will hopefully change over time. Is there any apologies tonight? We already have apologies from Councillor Watkin, who hopefully will be joining later at the LGR. I apologise profusely. I apologise. I should have my hand smacked for that, really. I've just turned the other one off, not this one. Right. Councillor Watkin joining later at the LGR briefing to try and make head of what's going on for down the line. Councillor Bannerman, and we have a substitute today in Councillor Freeman, Sally Freeman. We have Councillor Gilmore, who's obviously no longer a panel member, not with us today.
Sorry, Chair, just a point of correction. I'm substituting Councillor Dan today.
Councillor Dan for?
Sudan. I'm substituting Sudan today, not Councillor Bannerman.
All right, sorry, it's written Bannerman here, that's all. Okay.
Through you, Chair, just a point of clarity, it's Councillor Bannerman who is apologies. Councillor Dan was substituting for Councillor Bannerman, but it's no longer.
I didn't know that.
It's a learning curve for all of us, isn't it? Right, okay. So, and obviously Councillor Gilmore is no longer a panel member, so Sally Creswell is obviously a new panel member to stand in for Councillor Gilmore, yes? Not correct?
I have been appointed to the committee as, yeah.
We have to appoint a vice chair specifically for this meeting. So, because I'm acting for chair today, but I'd therefore like to appoint a vice chair for the particular meeting, and I'd like to propose Grace Strickland, if I can, possibly. If I can have somebody as a seconder for that one, please.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Angie Smith. And Mark?
I'd like to propose Councillor Creswell because she will be the chair of this panel going forward.
Right, no problem. And you're second that, were you? Okie dokie. So, not
Through you, Chair. We had a first proposal for Councillor Stickland, and that was seconded, so we need to vote on that one before we move to the next one.
Sally Creswell, please. So votes for Sally? And against? No abstain? Sally Creswell, Vice Chair. Thank you. Sorry, so you got enough room now, Rose? You got enough room now? Okay. Well, happy moving on to number 2 on the agenda. Declarations of interest. Is there any members of declaration got any interest at all in anything we're going to be talking about this evening? Anybody at all? No? Okay, moving on. Item 3. The minutes of the last meeting, which was held on February the 11th, 2026. I take these are a true account of what happened in the minutes. Has anybody got any problems with page 1, page 2, page 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, no? Everybody happy with all the minutes? Can I have a proposer for the minutes, please? Mark Coker's proposed minutes.
Yeah, I'll propose themselves here.
Excellent. I was just going to say it had to be at the meeting to propose them. And can we have a second as well, please? Seconded by Lewis Sutton. Okay. Right. There's no chair's urgent business at this moment in time.
Sorry to jump in, Chair, through you. We just need to have a vote from everyone on the panel to make sure they're happy with the minutes.
Sorry, yes.
I was going to say, I think it's only Councillor Freeman and Councillor Coker who were actually present at the meeting. And Councillor Allen, sorry.
And go home. I'm sorry. I apologise for that as well. I am learning as I go. Right. So, chair's urgent business. There's nobody. So, chair's urgent business. We talked about that tonight. No. Okay. We're on to number 5, please. Right. Item 5 is Director of Business Plans. I'd like to introduce Gary Walbridge, if I can, please, the Strategic Director for Adults Health and Communities. Provide a short update on the Directorate Business Plans. Over to you, please, Gary.
Thank you, Chair. This is just a very quick update. One, just to introduce to the panel the fact that every directorate has now drafted and created what it calls its own business plans. Those business plans set out some of the key priorities and goals and objectives for each department. The process that we're going through at the moment with those is now, they've been drafted. We're working with all of the portfolio holders, cabinet members around those business plans. And what we would expect to do is then start to bring the content of those business plans into the next scrutiny panels for you to have a chance to have a look at those and of course, question and challenge as you'd see fit. But I think today it was just to want to make sure the panel was aware that the council has created all the business plans for each of its directorates, and we will be bringing, for this scrutiny, a number of sections from some of the business plans because of the kind of breadth of this portfolio. So we're bringing those to a future scrutiny. Okay.
Anybody got any questions, Doc? Mark?
Gary, can I just ask on that? If you're going to pick and choose what comes to scrutiny, can I make a recommendation that all of the departments all of the directorates' plans actually are brought to the management board so that we can see them all, rather than doing it in piecemeal? Because as chair of the management board, I'd like to try and keep it all together. So otherwise the management board won't see everybody's.
So I certainly would have no problem with that. I think the reason I've described it in that way, and I think that might be a good way forward, Councillor Coker, is because, for example, my directorate, Adults, Health and Communities, has a section which will go to health and care scrutiny, and then we've got some other aspects which will need to come to this scrutiny. So I think in terms of that decision making, that would feel sensible from my perspective, and certainly no problem.
Thank you, Gary. So, Chair, can I put that as a recommendation when we move on, please?
Right. Has anybody else got any questions? Sorry, I missed something, Mark.
No, it's fine, Chair.
No. Anybody else got any questions for Gary? No. Okay. I'll move on to the Armed Forces Covenant Board.
Sorry to interrupt again, Chair. Yeah, I'm not normally like this, but actually I made a recommendation. I had a seconder, so we need to put that through now that the members of the committee agree that, so it can all go to Scrutiny Management Board to see everyone's. I mean, if we make a recommendation and it's overturned, that's fine, but that's the recommendation that I made.
Through you, Chair, what I would suggest, welcome comments, is that we take the individual parts of those business plans to these panels, the whole business plans to the Scrutiny Management Board. At the last meeting, the Scrutiny Management Board recommended that the panels see the business plans. So if we're going to do it to the Scrutiny Management Board, we're going to have like duplicate. So we take the whole plan there, the individual aspects to these individual panels. If that makes sense.
Yeah, okay, happy with that.
Okay, so just a proposed second and show of hands for that, please, Chair.
Show of hands, everybody happy? Yeah? Yeah? Thank you very much. All right. Any more questions, or are we all happy to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 6, Armed Forces Covenant? Everybody happy? Yes? All right. On item 6, the Armed Forces Community Covenant, I'd like to introduce Councillor Penberthy, who's a Cabinet Member for Cooperative and Community Development, and he can present the Armed Forces Community Covenant. Thank you very much. Crystal, to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm really pleased to present the Armed Forces Covenant Annual Report for 2025-26. I think this is the first time that we've managed to bring this to scrutiny, and I welcome that opportunity. We, as a city, have a unique and long-standing relationship with our armed forces. We are the leading armed forces city in the country. We have the largest naval base in Western Europe, as well as providing homes for Army and the Marines and 2 different territorial sites within the city boundaries. We first signed the Armed Forces Covenant in the summer of 2012 when we hosted National Armed Forces Day. At that point, the covenant was a voluntary agreement, and we were really pleased to be able to do that in the presence of the then Earl of Wessex and Prime Minister. As a city, we are home to thousands of serving personnel. We have the second largest population of veterans of any local authority in the country, and we have military families, and they make a significant contribution to our communities, our economy, our identity as a city. It's therefore right that we continue, and we were really pleased when the Armed Forces Covenant became legislative, to ensure that this community is treated fairly, supported appropriately, and not disadvantaged as a result of their service. I would say that one of the disadvantages of becoming statutory is that it became very limited in what we were meant to do. So the statutory duties cover employment, education, and housing only. Sorry, employment and education is a sort of linked thing, housing and health only. Whereas we as a city had done a lot of work on partnership, so we not only meet our statutory obligations, which we report on here, but also we want to demonstrate the significant partnership work that takes place across the city through our Armed Forces Covenant Partnership, which we're proud to convene and to chair. Over the last year, we've continued to strengthen support across housing, education, health and employment. We've improved identification of support of veterans within housing services, maintained compliance with our statutory duties, expanded support for service children through schools and networks across the city, and worked closely with health partners to improve awareness of veteran needs and access to support. Our action plans tend to identify things that aren't currently done so that they become business as usual, rather than stacking the action plan with lots of business as usual, so that we can really focus on what we want to do. The report also highlights the strength of our partnerships, from Armed Forces Day and remembrance activities to employment support through Skills Launchpad, to the growing number of organisations signing the covenant and achieving employer recognition scheme awards. Plymouth continues to demonstrate our commitment to being an armed forces friendly city. When we're thinking about the armed forces within the council, there are 3 different strands to our work. There's policy, there's our internal and delivery work, and there's our partnership convening work. In terms of policy, that's led through the Chief Exec's Department, the Policy and Partnerships team, who ensure that the council is aware of everything that's changing nationally, make sure that we're up to date with things that are coming up that are potential changes so we can respond to consultations and engage properly. And if there is anything to do with the armed forces community, that's fed to the appropriate directorates for engagement. They also support the internal work to ensure that our delivery meets requirements and to support the work of our Defence Recognition Award. And I'm really pleased that we went from our first award was silver, our second award was gold, and we have maintained our gold award into our 3rd period. That is a real accreditation of the work that the council does and the way that we as an organisation treat the armed forces community in the city. Our partnership work has been supported by the policy team, though that's now moving to our Thriving Communities work with the action plan that was signed off earlier this year, because that team is supporting partnerships across the city in the voluntary community and social enterprise sectors, and that sits really comfortably with the other work that they are doing. If I think about the last year, some of my highlights would be attending the opening of Stirling House, our second veteran self-build project up in Honicknoll, the unveiling of Ebb and Flow, currently situated outside the Council House before it moves to its permanent home in the Peace Garden, designed as a result of children from armed forces families working on a poetry workshop to explore their feelings and engaging through that with two local artists. In fact, they engaged with a range of artists at the University of Arts, and then those artists presented their ideas back to the children, who chose their favourite piece. So the piece outside was inspired by children and chosen by children. It was designed to a veteran, who was supported by a veteran, who are both mature students at the University of Arts, and it was fabricated by Babcock's, with materials being provided by the Babcock supply chain, really showing how the city coming together can create a new piece of public art that reflects the feelings of children in the city. And I think that's very, very powerful. Another piece of learning, and we are a learning partnership and a learning covenant, is the Director of Public Health report last year focused on women in the city and identified issues in terms of women veterans and especially women who are serving. Quite often, when we think about women in terms of the armed forces community, it's thought about spouses, and it was really good to have a focus on that as a hook in the Director of Public Health's report. We've used that at the Armed Forces Covenant Partnership to discuss what that means. Partners are going away and thinking about it, and we think that actually that discussion locally with national input, which was really appreciating the work that Plymouth was doing, is going to enable us to do further work to support women who are serving and women veterans, because they are often forgotten. And the language of veterans is something that I'm using here as a bit of shorthand. One of the things we've learned when we're talking to other people is, especially finding out whether people have served, is not to ask whether someone's a veteran. And I know there have been council members who would say that they were not veterans despite the fact they have served. So we're trying to encourage people not only to talk about veterans, but in asking for people's status, to ask whether they have served, because we think there's probably an underestimate of the number of veterans in the city. That makes it harder for us to ensure that we are doing the work that we need to do properly. Of course, there's always more to do. And the report identifies clear priorities for the coming year, including strengthening how we evidence due regard in decision-making, improving data collection, particularly regarding service children, and further enhancing support for veterans and military families. Having said that, since the report was published, it has come to light that we missed out that a refreshed health needs assessment is being done this year, being led by Improving Lives. So my apologies that that did get missed out. I think it just goes to show the scale of work being done through the partnership and the theme groups. It's sometimes difficult to remember everything. In coming to my conclusion of these remarks, I'd first of all like to thank Councillor Pauline Murphy, who has continued to be our Armed Forces champion. She does an amazing job, because for her, it's not just about a theme, it's not just about words on paper, it's about people and their lives. And she has championed individuals, and she has championed parts of the voluntary community sector that are specifically supporting armed forces communities. She's championed ideas. She's put people together to make partnerships work. She was the person who managed to put all the bits together that made Ebb and Flow happen. I would like to thank our military colleagues for the support they give us on a tri-service basis, our public sector partners who are increasingly stepping up to the plate, and all of the VCFSE organisations who work to support all of our armed forces community, because together their commitment is enormous, and working together we are proving that we are more than the sum of our parts, and really delivering very well for our armed forces community in Plymouth. And I think you will find that reflected in this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pembrokey. Absolutely fantastic. Right, So can we ask that the notes of that report are noted, that the panel is asked to note that those contents have been.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair, but first, is there anyone with any questions?
Anyone got any questions? Yes, sorry, Jerry, yes. Has anyone got any questions on what Councillor Campbell had to say? Yes, please.
Yeah. I was actually in the forces for 18 years. I worked in the Art College for 11 years and I worked in the DWP for 7 years. No, a little less actually, which is quite good. What I was going to ask was, is there any of the charities that deal with the forces pensions for the men and women? Because that seems to be neglected a bit on that report. I couldn't find anything. Does anybody do work with charities? Like charities do work with pensions, advising?
There are a range of charities that support veterans and serving personnel with their advice and support needs. DWP, if someone has a pension issue, will signpost quite actively to those. It's not just the Legion and SAFA. There are the Royal Marines Associations and the Naval Associations and all the others. There are also all of the associations that are linked to specific, in some cases, conflicts, in some cases, bases or units or ships. And a lot of those, if they don't have welfare officers, will have routes in to the welfare officers in other people. So there's actually a wide range, and so it's not just one. And it does mean that people are able to access support through the places they would want and most happily engage with it, rather than saying the only route is through. So there are lots and lots. It's almost too many to mention, but there are loads, and I would hasten to say those organisations offer advice and support on a whole range of things, not just benefits and health, but on lots of other issues that veterans and serving personnel face. They do amazing jobs.
Sorry, and the wives, I was a military wife for 22 years, happily divorced now, should be saying that. But there is a lot of violence within marriages in the forces. Is there support available for wives and spouses?
I'm really pleased that our violence against women and girls and domestic abuse work is very inclusive, and the support there is available. We commission support as a council. The support is inclusive and signposting where appropriate. So if someone was to enter through one of those support services, they would likely end up within our own domestic abuse service, which is a commission service and a partnership. If you are aware of people who are experiencing violence, I would highly recommend that you contact that, and you'll find their details on the Plymouth Online Directory. Actually, if a woman is experiencing violence, please do encourage them to report it to the police as well. It is unacceptable that anyone faces violence, and we do know it is a hidden issue within many homes, including those of armed forces serving communities, at peak times when we know there can be specific stresses in the homes relating to service. And I think if that's flagged, then that should receive the additional support it needs.
Oh, thank you, because I've got quite a few service personnel within my ward in Plymouth, Dunstan. So yeah, thank you.
Is there any more questions at all from anybody? Sorry. Sally, can I hear your question, please?
Thank you. Thank you for that report, Councillor Penberthy, very comprehensive. Just a little observation I'm going to start with before we start is especially after what Councillor Strickland said as well, is that I'm surprised that people don't think of serving women as well as serving men, because I've had a class at one time in which I had children in that class who had both parents who were actually serving, and both parents actually being deployed at one time at the same time. So that's that's going back sort of like nearly 10 years ago. So just an interesting observation there to bear in mind. I'm really interested and really keen, as you can probably expect with my background, Councillor Penberthy, about this improved data capture and particularly monitoring, especially service children. And what I specifically wanted to ask is about the pupil service premium, the SPP. And I'd wondered, in terms of that improved data capture, would we be able to find ways in which we can encourage, because not all parents who are serving or have been serving in the past 6 years or whatever necessarily inform school always. And are there ways that we could encourage all our parents who are serving military to apply for and make it known to school that they are serving or have been serving military personnel? And I say that particularly in light to some of the success that you had, Councillor Penberthy in particular, in managing to get a number of children onto increasing our number of children who were registered as having free school meals, and also therefore the school is in receipt of pupil premium. The other thing I want to ask is, what are we doing as well to monitor and to encourage good practice in schools to make sure that service pupil premium is actually used appropriately, because it's very much centred around pastoral support. It has a slightly different way that it should be used. If it's being used correctly, it's a different way that it should be used to other traditional forms of pupil premium. So that's probably quite a bit there, but something to consider.
Yeah, so we're always actively encouraging schools to make the most of every opportunity that they have to get the government funding that they are entitled to. And that includes not only free school meals, and I've really been pleased at how much we've managed to get uptake on that improved, but also on service pupil premiums. In theory, this should follow the child and should be easy, but we know that there are issues. Mike Houseman and his team, because there is a theme group on children and young people and schools, work really hard with schools. The theme group of serving personnel has identified that their experience is that many schools claim the premium but don't use it to support service children, and that is, I think, shocking, because each child's £350. It might be massed up to enable schools to do more, but should be spent on supporting service children. That is an issue for the schools, and as we all know, most schools are now becoming part of MATs, and it can be very difficult to get in, but that is something that I know is being worked on to try and see what we can do. So as you're picking up, there are lots of theme groups. So there are partnerships within the partnership on special schemes. And we are really keen that that improves. The schools that participate and pool their premium are the schools that end up with children engaged in things like ebb and flow, where some of their pupils ended up in Devonport Dockyard watching the fabricating happening and getting tours and all sorts of other things. So there is real benefit to schools doing that, and we've got a lot of really good projects in the city, but they do depend on schools working well. We're always looking for exemplars. Michael's always looking for exemplars, and I'm sure should the management board wish to ask Children's Scrutiny to look at the use of the service pupil premium, that might be very welcome, because that might give a little bit of pressure from someone outside of the armed forces community into that same discussion, because I think it is a discussion worth having. We do need to make sure that every child gets their pupil premium, and we do need to make sure that the schools use it to support the children of serving personnel. And the voices of those children are very powerful, and as I said, the team do amazing work. In fact, I know Councillor Stevens raised our engagement in national stuff from a school thing cabinet on Monday, and we're picking that up. So, and Councillor Stevens was formerly one of the key people who actually secured that pupil premium when he was a head teacher at Goosewell. So, yeah, we do want to make sure that an idea that came out of Plymouth benefits Plymouth children.
Could I, Chair, through you, if I could just follow that up then? I think that actually it's gone up to £360 in the new financial year. But I think there's a really good case there about perhaps sharing good practice and so that other schools can actually see that good practice where it is in effect. Perhaps there is in fact something there to put a recommendation through of actually looking at having a bit of a look at how the service premium is actually used effectively and as it should in fact be used. And it's hard to so perhaps sharing good practice is one of the ways of doing so. Perhaps there is something in there for taking some sort of recommendation through to children's services. I don't know, but there are good examples of good practice, and it would be an idea to actually push that on. Could I just say one other thing? Is there any chance of having a sort of a kind of a push, an advertisement or whatever, push towards the encouragement to report service status to schools, so that it goes through before the autumn census goes through, because that's when that figure becomes really important to schools and also to maintaining that schools actually receive that money.
I understand that both of those are already done by Mike and his team in terms of both pushing through, trying to make sure, and that's pushed through not only through the school side, but it's also pushed through by our serving personnel theme group. So we're doing pinch the movements wherever we can, and the sharing of good practice is done, and that theme group feeds into the work that Michael then distributes out through the schools networks in the city. So we are pushing all of that. I think one of the bits with schools is that nationally it is recognised that schools need to be aware that there are times that children will need to be out of school during term time. One of the issues we are finding in the city is schools are inconsistent with the way they allow children to have time off during term time, which can be to do with a serving person coming back home for R&R and needing to take a break during term time. And we have recently had incidents where parents have been fined because of doing that. And so we do want schools to be consistent and to consistently support armed forces children. It's something we believe as a council, and it's something that they should be doing under the legislation. It's just that I think some MATs and some head teachers forget that there is an armed forces covenant that covers them too, and they need to pay due diligence to it. And maybe if the Children and Young People's Scrutiny panel was to look at the covenant through the eyes of the Children, Young People and Families theme group, that would be an opportunity to explore some of the issues in schools and support for children and young people that is done through schools, because as you said, that's about how we use influence. We can't sadly tell people what to do, but our partnership is about how we influence people. It is about influencing people for change, and it is about bringing people together to ensure that we get the delivery that supports our armed forces community here in Plymouth as best as we can.
Thank you very much, Councillor Creswell, and thanks very much, Councillor Pemberthy, for your response. Is there any more questions at all from the panel at all? I have a very quick one for Councillor Pemberthy, if I may. There is roughly figures of 10% in the whole of the population in the UK, of Plymouth, sorry, that are either ex-services or veterans. With that number possibly growing because of our way we are in the world and we're pumping money into defence now, possibly this could grow, do we feel that the Forces Covenant Board meets enough to warrant 10,000 people? Or do you think we should be doing more, or are you happy with the way that we do service that?
It's not about the number of meetings we have. There are 8.1% from memory of the population of Plymouth identified as veterans in the census. That's an impressive number. Actually, that number could well decline, not grow, because the cohort that are older were older at a point where our armed forces were larger. And so as the armed forces numbers have dwindled, the numbers of people coming through as veterans are smaller now than they were 40 years ago, 50 years ago, when the armed forces were bigger. So it is a movable feast. We are going to continue to be a naval base. That means that we'll probably have a greater focus in 20 or 30 years potentially on serving personnel and their families rather than veterans. However, the partnership board meets 3 times a year. That's a partnership of any of the organisations in the city working with our armed forces community. A lot of those are also engaged in the theme groups, some of them in more than one theme group, because there are theme groups around education and skills and transitioning specifically there. So rather than the children's age, on children and young people, theme groups on serving personnel. So there's a number of theme groups around which are all working, that have memberships. And the members of those partners are themselves all organisations that are devoting some or all of their time to supporting our armed forces communities. So I don't think it's about, do we need more meetings? It's actually about, are the meetings used well to encourage people to think and to provide the partnerships? And I think we have consistently, as an administration, worked hard at those partnership meetings to make sure that agendas are well put together. At our last meeting, we had the Director of Public Health. At our next one, we have a government minister. We've put in people, we've had people who are housing specialists coming in to talk about their areas, and we get whole group discussion around those things. It is because of the partnership that we were able to secure funding both this year and last year for the Veterans Village at Armed Forces Day. So I think that the partnership does well. I don't know that pulling people more and more out of their day jobs to sit round tables, if we don't have a good reason to do so, would be the right thing to do, because the partnership is broad. A lot of the theme groups meet more frequently, and they will meet at the times that they feel they need to meet. And lots of those theme groups are led by people outside of the council, because they're the people who are the specialists. So Improving Lives Plymouth, the naval base, Skills Launchpad in partnership with the NHS. Those are people outside the council leading things, not people inside. If they wanted to meet every week, they'd be meeting every week, I can assure you. But actually what they want to do is pull their thinking together, then get out and do it. And I think that the more we can encourage people to be out there, and for veterans, especially in the city, to engage in the veterans organisations. When I talk to the flag bearers and others, the standard bearers and others, one of the things they're talking about is that quite often their associations are shrinking because newer veterans aren't wanting to engage in some of those more traditional activities. And those groupings are really important to support people, to give people that first level of signposting, to help their community cohese, support each other, feel well, and link to others. So I would encourage people to get involved in those organisations rather than think that if they get involved, they come and have to sit in a meeting with me, because there's better things to do with your life.
Thank you very much for your response. I mean, my question basically was, I'm very, very happy with our partnership with the armed forces, and especially in a service town, where it used to be as massive as it did back in the 70s, 80s. I'm really, really pleased with what the council are doing in relationship. I was just wondering, do you feel like you would want more, or do you feel like everything's going well? And from your answer, you've answered my question.
We used to try and convene meetings of theme leads, but the theme leads said that actually they didn't need to meet as well.
Yeah.
So we cut the number of meetings in response to how people feel that it's more important that they work. People know that Pauline and I are available all the time, and Pauline does pick up a lot of that. So her role as a champion
She's an asset.
Is actually really good for the council and makes lots of that happen. So I think actually our community covenant is successful because of relationships. not because of formalities of meetings. And it's those relationships that you see and feel as you engage with the community around the city.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Are all questions done now? Everybody happy? Has everybody got any questions at all? Thank you very much for all the questions. Recommendation that we...
Sorry to interrupt, Chair. I just want to capture this before we sort of move on to the next bit, as we had a potential recommendation from Councillor Cresswell around how service pupil premium is being used in Plymouth at the moment. Would you like to put that forward as a formal recommendation?
Yes, I think it might be useful to actually be able to delve into how the service pupil premium is actually being used across the city, particularly drawing together some elements of good practice as well.
If I may, Chair, could I suggest that that's picked up by the Children and Young People's Scrutiny panel, because they have the expertise in schools and will be able to link it into other discussions that they have as well.
Can we put that as a recommendation to children's, or we can't, it comes from us?
Under the new system that we're trying, Councillor Cresswell, any recommendations for other panels from this meeting go to the Scrutiny Management Board for them to direct it to the appropriate panel.
Can I then put that as a recommendation that would then go to Scrutiny Management Board? Councillor Coker, how?
That's fine. That's perfectly within the remit.
Any more questions? Again. Okay. You second it, yeah? Okay. All right.
Yeah, we just need a show of hands.
Can we have a show of hands, please? All right. The second recommendation in the report is that we endorse the Council's continued commitment to delivering the Armed Forces Covenant, including the priorities identified for the forthcoming year. I propose that we can do all this. Can I have a seconder, please? Anybody against? Any abstains?
Yeah, we need a vote for first.
Sorry, right, okay. Your second. Right. I apologise. I mean, this is the first time I was in the chair. And I only got out of hospital 2 days ago as well, if that's right. So
we'll vote for first. So.
Can we have a vote for that thing first, please? Okay. Right. So are we ready to move on now? Yeah. Okay. Move on to number 7, which is the future libraries plan. Move on to item 7. Do quite well on time as well. So moving on to item 7, which is the future libraries plan, I'd like to welcome Councillor Blight, the Cabinet Member for Education, Skills and Partnerships, to present the future libraries plan. I don't believe Councillor Blight, yes, Councillor Blight is here now. Okay. So we'll also be joined by Graham Naylor, Head of the Library Service, and Nick Shaw, Acting Consultant in Public Health. Okay. Good evening, everybody. So Councillor Blight, are you happy to carry on?
Thank you very much. Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to introduce the draft Future Libraries Plan to the Scrutiny panel. It sets out our vision for ensuring Plymouth's libraries remain sustainable, relevant and accessible for future generations. This plan builds on 150 years of the free public library service in Plymouth. It recognises that our libraries remain among the most trusted and valued public services, but also acknowledges that the way people use their libraries has changed. Physical book borrowing has declined nationally as well as in the city, as digital access has increased. Residents are increasingly looking to libraries for wider support, information and community connections. Our aim is simple: to protect and strengthen core library services whilst enabling libraries to play a broader role as community hubs. Books, reading, literacy and learning remain at the heart of the libraries, but libraries should also provide easier access to council services, skills development, digital support, health and wellbeing activities and early help. The 5 principles of the plan are access, expertise, sustainability, community focus and prevention. These principles will help us increase access to services, maintain professional standards, make the best use of public resources, strengthen communities, and support residents before problems escalate into crisis. This plan represents the broad framework. There will be more information about workforce development, greater partnership working, investment in digital services, and the need for maximising external funding and income generation. It's important to say that volunteers will complement, not replace, our trained professional library staff. In summary, this plan aligns the library service with the Council's wider ambitions for prevention, community engagement, and improving health and wellbeing. The Future Libraries Plan is about the evolution of, not the reduction of, our library service. It will ensure that our libraries continue to be places of learning, opportunity, and community connection. I want to thank the officers, particularly Graham and Nick, for their vision and commitment to the city's libraries. I'm going to hand over to Graham now.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for this opportunity this evening to talk to you briefly about our library service and a little more about the future library plan with you. I'm really passionate about people. I'm really passionate about libraries and the positive difference that library services can make and do make to residents and their lives. It's a passion that I'm fortunate to share with all my colleagues who together on a daily basis deliver the library service throughout the city. Thought it might be useful to begin by sharing with you some of our statistics from the 2025-26 financial year to give you a feel for the library service. Last year, we welcomed 340,000 customers through our doors. We issued over 300,000 physical items, generally physical books, and we issued over 100,000 e-books and e-audio books. We joined 9,000 new members. We delivered 150 outreach events in schools and in other locations in the city. We welcomed 6,500 children and their parents to Lego clubs. We welcomed 5,000 children to branch libraries on school visits. We helped over 300 customers at job clubs. Our public computers were logged in 55,000 times and 63,000 users used our free Wi-Fi on their own devices. And finally, our family history subscription websites were searched over 70,000 times in the library and throughout all of our 11 libraries. Those are pretty remarkable statistics, and I'm pleased to say that we achieve all of this work on a budget of just over £2 million, the majority of which is understandably spent on our staffing and delivering services to our residents. Within that budget, 166,000 is allocated to our stock fund, and that fund purchases library materials for libraries across the city, including books, e-books, audiobooks, newspapers, magazines, children's collections, and other lending resources. And although relatively modest in size, the investment supports collections that are borrowed more than 400,000 times each year. This ensures that we provide residents with access to high-quality reading, learning, and information resources. The Futures Libraries Plan recognises the financial pressures facing local government and seeks to maximise the social value delivered from our existing library estate, from our workforce and partnerships. And you'll see from the draft plan that our strategic framework is based upon 4 strategic priorities, they being library services, health and well-being, skills and digital access, and customer service. These priorities actually align with the National Libraries Connected Universal Offers, and those are offers that all library authorities around the country try at least to adhere to. And they are reinforced both by our existing activity and by feedback received through public engagement with users and non-users during May and June of this year. I'd like to give you a brief summary of our public engagement. We received 132 responses from current users and current non-users. The survey was made available to residents online via social media and in libraries, and that enabled us to reach both current and non-current users. And whilst the number of responses is arguably modest, the findings were remarkably consistent and aligned closely with the feedback that library staff receive from customers every day. We learned that libraries are predominantly used for borrowing books, audiobooks, magazines, newspapers, both in physical and in electronic formats, for accessing computers, printing, photocopying, Wi-Fi, research and family history, for children's activities, rhyme time, craft sessions, reading groups, book clubs, and several respondents praised the helpful staff and the sense of community that libraries are able to provide. The main obstacle within the consultation or the engagement for non-users is limited opening hours, with some respondents saying that the hours do not fit around work or family commitments. And inconvenient or reduced opening hours remains a national as well as local barrier for non-library use. We found that there is a strong demand for libraries as information hubs, and the majority of respondents want libraries to host access points for council information and advice, including help with council tax, housing, bins, blue badges, bus passes. Several comments noted that it is difficult to get through to council services by phone, so libraries would provide a helpful in-person, face-to-face route for that support. There is support for health-related services in libraries, those services delivered by specialists, especially for non-clinical support and signposting. And popular suggestions include blood pressure checks, health MOTs, vaccination clinics, baby weighing, and other basic health screening opportunities. And in line with this work, we launched our blood pressure monitor loan collection earlier this month, which enables customers to borrow a blood pressure monitor and manage their own health at home. Overall, we found that the responses show that respondents strongly value libraries and really want them to remain centred on books and learning, on reading and access to information, and really importantly, support. At the same time, many respondents see libraries as a natural place for wider community support, including council advice, as I mentioned, health and well-being, and local services. And libraries are blessed because we are recognised as trusted local community hubs, and we really want to play a much broader civic role in future. The single most repeated improvement request is for longer or more convenient opening hours. And the feedback around opening hours, as I say, is clear and addressed partially by the plan. While current financial constraints mean we are being realistic right now with how we can open libraries, the plan explores how partnerships, volunteers, technology, and different service delivery models will improve access and extend availability. I'd like to make everyone clear, of course, that library buildings whilst not open 24/7, our customers are able to access digital library services 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And we know that this is a really important service because the use of our digital library service continues to grow. This is evidenced by an average of 2.5k issues per week, which equates to roughly double the physical issues at our biggest and busiest library, and that's Central Library, which is open for over 50 hours a week. What we are proposing in our draft plan is very much in the spirit of what our neighbouring services are doing. In Cornwall, our nearest libraries at Saltash and Tor Point are community hubs, offering traditional library services alongside those of partner organisations, primarily health and wellbeing, and offering residents a welcoming community space. In Devon, libraries are run by Libraries Unlimited, a commission service, and in some areas they operate a staffed and unstaffed model for opening, providing increased opening hours, but with limited to no support for users across a bulk of the week. This model operates in some smaller libraries, such as that at Ashburton, but not at bigger libraries like Exeter, Kingsbridge or Ivybridge. Overall, this is a really exciting time for Plymouth's libraries. The plan is focused on strengthening and sustaining our library network by making libraries even more relevant, accessible and valuable to the communities they serve. Importantly, it builds upon our continuing statutory responsibility to provide a comprehensive and efficient library service. Books, reading, literacy, learning, and access to information remain at the core of everything we do. And success will be measured through increased footfall, membership growth, customer satisfaction, digital participation, health and wellbeing partnership activity, community engagement, and improved utilisation of library spaces. We're really proud to say that libraries change lives, and we put our users at the heart of everything that we do. And if you'll indulge me for 1 minute longer, I'd like to share with you a short illustration of what success could look like with our plan for a Plymouth resident in the future. I'd like us all to imagine we have a friend called Alice. She's 67 and she lives alone. Following the death of her husband, her days and her life gradually becomes more isolated. Days often pass for her without a meaningful conversation. But during a routine medical appointment, her GP makes an unexpected suggestion. Why don't you visit the library? Alice is hesitant. She hasn't used the library for decades. When she arrives at the library, she's welcomed by a volunteer who introduces her to a wellbeing drop-in hosted by partners and a weekly coffee and chat group. At first, she sits quietly. Soon, she's talking with others, returning each week and building new friendships. What starts as a library visit becomes part of her life. She joins activities, volunteers to support others, and becomes connected to her community once again. After a year, Alice has new friends, renewed confidence, a sense of purpose, and a stronger awareness of where to access support. When asked what made the difference, she says, "The library gave me the place where I felt welcome. It helped me find people, purpose, and connection again." Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Does anybody on the panel have any questions at all, Mark?
Thank you, Chair. You know what I'm going to say, Graham. I welcome this review. It's long overdue. I welcome the use of libraries for community stuff, for health stuff. I would hope that we're pressing the NHS to contribute and take part in this, because they have a habit of saying, yes, we'll do it, but no, we're not giving you any money. And it's really important that if we're going to use our buildings to facilitate their services, I know it gets more footfall in, but nothing in this world is free. So I would suggest and hopeful when we get the next report, we will see the contributions that we get. The other question that you know I'm going to ask is, we've got an ultra-modern library in Devonport. We've got a real community there that needs access to services. They're not digitally inclusive in Devonport. Not everybody, but more than, say, Grace's ward in Plimpton. Yeah, a Plimpstock. Yeah, Plimpton and Plimpstock get 4.5 or 5 days service. Devonport, and you know how much I've been moaning about this, get a Monday and a Wednesday and no other service at all. So what I would plea for in this review is that we don't just look at the numbers in a community, we look at the needs of the community. We've still got in Devonport a much shorter lifespan, and Professor Steve's predecessor, Ruth, and I talked about this for years. We've got more children with obesity. We've got less children having good meals. We've got less educational attainment, and we've got 2 days a week library service. You tell me that's right and that's fair. So in that, I would hope that we're going to address these inadequacies that I have been persevering with for the last 10 years. So I'd like some comment on that.
I would like to say that I am utterly sympathetic to what you say, and library services for me are for everybody, and it's a real sadness that we've not been able to get Devonport Library open more right now. I can assure you that it's very much on the table as we speak, and I've had some really productive conversations with Reverend Sue at the church as well. I think the beauty with Devonport is that it's a very tight community, and with some excellent volunteer support as well, which I would love to see the community in Devonport assist us with too, we can get the library open more. I appreciate that the digital need is there. That's very much something that digital skills are really high on our agenda for the library plan, because it does worry me that we live within a society these days that you're generally expected to be able to use technology, smartphone, iPad, whatever it might be. And we know from working frontline in libraries and in other locations that that doesn't work for everybody, and really passionate to ensure that there's real fairness and equity here. When it comes to money from the NHS, sweeping back to your other question, I can't particularly answer that right now, but I might look at Professor Steve for that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Coker. So yeah, the NHS are very much involved in our conversations around this, particularly the development of the plan, but you're right, what we need them to do is put some money on the table in that space. Now, some of that is either directly through the NHS's commissioners, but some of that is through them as service providers as well. So the example Graham gave around the blood pressure monitoring is through an NHS provider, not necessarily the NHS, but absolutely. This isn't just about the NHS though, this is about all partners in our community being able to contribute, because we do have a finite amount of budget that's available, which will stifle us in being able to do that. But as Graham's also touched on, Pride in Place, particularly for Devonport, is another opportunity for us as well to look to see how we can utilise that alongside other resources. So yes, absolutely heard your points there.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you very much. Councillor Alan Freeman, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have a number of things that I would like to go through, if Chair will indulge me, please, because each one relates to the one before. So, yeah, nothing's more important than libraries at the moment, though. It's in my little brain. Welcome to my world. Thank you, Chair. Right, I'm going to go through it bit by bit. One thing I do want to pick up on though, sorry, Graham, what you were referring to just now about volunteers. Councillor Coker and I have been trying so hard since I got elected in 2024 to actually get a team of volunteers in to Devonport Library so we could be open more days a week, and we were refused on several occasions on the basis of legalities, insurance, and so on and so on. So it's quite miraculous that this has now changed, but without letting us know. On the whole, I really, really welcome this document. It is long, long overdue. We've been promised it for, well, like I said, since I started. It's great to see it on the table now. There's the comments I want to make going through. Page 33, it refers to the sharp decline due to the COVID. We all know everything closed down in COVID. Unfortunately, our library in Devonport is one of those that didn't get to bounce back after COVID. Our numbers wouldn't have stabilised, they would have carried on increasing had the services been put back into that library. So I just want to highlight that. On page 36, I just got to get to page 36 now, sorry, bear with me. To maximise the reach, accessibility and impact of these services, a combination, a full review of the current staffing model and a comprehensive volunteer programme will be implemented. Brilliant, but I'm really concerned that whoever shut the volunteer team suggestions down before is on board with this, and it's not suddenly going to get shut down again. So I'd like some assurances about that. Also, what I would like to actually know, what date is this work starting? What date do we anticipate having it completed by? And one thing that the document doesn't refer to is consultation with local ward councillors for each library area. That is really, really important. In so many wards, the councillors that have been in place for a longer length of term, and that's no disrespect to any newcomers on board, they were actually involved in either the setting up of the libraries or the relocation of the libraries, which then goes on to page 42. You're talking about perhaps looking at community venues, relocating perhaps, or co-locations of some libraries. Again, before anything can be made concrete about that, you've got to have those discussions with the ward councillors, please. So I'm looking for assurances, really, that those things, the consultation with local ward councillors and the local communities will take place, because it's not referred to in here. I think it is something that needs adding in to tighten it up a little bit. There is so much knowledge around all ward councillors. To miss out on that is kind of like a little bit of an own goal with it. But on the whole, really pleased. Thank you, Chair, for indulging me.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Can I come back on some of those things, please, Chair?
Sorry, sir?
Can I come back on some of those things, please, Chair?
You certainly can, yes.
Thank you. In terms of the volunteers issue, it's unfortunate, but that was then and this is now, and we're looking forward. In terms of consultation with councillors, of course, as a councillor I wouldn't say anything else, would I? But also we need to be mindful that this is a plan for the whole of the city, and we only have 11 libraries. Those libraries serve more than one ward, more than one community, and everybody should have an opportunity to contribute to that discussion, regardless of whether there is a physical library in your ward or not. And I think that last point I want to make, absolutely in terms of dates and money, but we don't have a magic wand. We are within constraints. We're not at a time of growth. We're in a time of being creative. And we will look, the library service will look to working with councillors, working with local residents and the people who know the libraries best, the staff and the users, to make sure that we get it right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bright. Is there any other questions, please? Councillor, sorry, Rooney? Yes?
Thank you for the presentation. You mentioned all the books, etc., that were taken out. You didn't actually mention any music, and I gather you've got a huge music library. And how can that be integrated into the new system? And also how much you can possibly make some revenue from that as well. And how can you do that as well, please?
Thank you. We do have a number of special collections within our within the library service, one of them being the music collection, you're quite right. And we do already generate income from that service by lending our specialist music collection to choirs and societies around the country, not only just in Plymouth. Our music collection is a jewel in our crown because for Plymouth libraries and for the city of Plymouth, it's now a rarity to have within a public library authority. And so we're one of probably only 3 or 4 that has this amount of music within the city. On top of that, we have other special collections, predominantly our local and naval history collections as well. And we have real plans to digitise a lot of the material that we have. It's all currently sat largely at our library HQ. It's all available for public consultation and use. But we really want to get the information out there for people to use at home and also maximise income generation opportunities. And we've got ideas. We'd like to create a library shop and download images, and maybe you can buy a notepad with an image on the cover, etc., etc. And this is very much in line with what other library authorities have been doing around the country, and it just makes real sense to maximise fully the use of the collections we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will come back to you, Angie, in a second. Councillor Awori.
Yeah,
I don't know, that's how you say your name, but...
yeah, Councillor O'Rourke, that's perfect, thank you. So I've got a couple of things, but I'm just going to focus on one, and please, apologies if this is the wrong space to talk about this. I'm a new councillor, so let me know. I think one thing that's really clear is the whole purpose of this plan is to ultimately increase reading. It's not necessarily just about footfall, and in my mind, I don't feel like there is one massive behavioural barrier that we have, in that fundamentally going to a library and getting a library card is an opt-in system. You have to opt in, and that is a huge barrier because you will not walk into a library because you know then you have to apply for a library card. It's the same as an organ donation, right? Opt-in systems are a substantial behavioural barrier. So I have a recommendation and a question kind of in this too. Is there something we can explore? If we're putting money into ensuring that our libraries are receiving footfall and we want people to actually, reading starts from birth, right? And reading culture starts from birth. Could something to be explored be, my first library card when you're born? If you're born in the authority, you're issued a library card. Maybe it's digital, or when you join foundation, as you're enrolled in a local school, you have your first library card, and we change the system behaviourally, so we kind of have an opt-in system, and I think that would remove a massive barrier in terms of usage after that.
Thank you. I mean, yes, I fully agree. In the past, we have worked more closely with our registration colleagues, and indeed we're revisiting that right now because it seems really prudent to be able to maximise the opportunity when parents with a newborn are registering a birth that actually they're given a library card at that very moment in time. It's just a really easy thing for us to implement. And actually, like you say, it's not so much of an opt-in service then, it's something that you automatically are given. In a perfect world, it would be wonderful for everybody, whether a bus pass had a library card, but by library barcode on the back, and a Plim card had it, and so many other ways of doing it, so you're automatically given one. But for children and for birth, certainly, that's something we're working on right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham. 2 more questions, and Angie Smith is one. We'll come to you right afterwards, but Angie Smith, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you very much for a really detailed and encouraging report. As a retired English teacher who is also head of literacy, I did work very closely with Plymouth Library and Plimpton and Plymstock, actually, and organised lots of events with children. I suppose it's kind of a question and recommendation. My concern is that with now still in this country, we have 8.2 million adults who are functionally illiterate. So they have the reading ages of 10. And when you link this to, you know, if you look at the prisons and the crime, the majority of people who are guilty of violent crimes are actually, 98% of them are illiterate. And so I'm just wondering, my question is, if there was some way we could, and I tried desperately for all 22 years of my teaching, to try and get parents involved, because if you don't get the parents involved and get them into reading, the problem is then that if the children aren't being brought up in a reading environment, I mean, I'll give you an example. Once I started this literacy club and we identified children that were really struggling, because if they can't read or write and they can't access their curriculum once they get to secondary school, they are set up to fail. And then that's the next generation. Does that make sense? So I was just wondering, is there any way we could get funding so that schools could be encouraged to sort of create this sort of like reading club to get parents on board? Because I can tell you now, the minute I had a new class in September, and we used to do a little reading and writing test. As soon as I marked their writing paper, I could tell the children who came from families who had a bookcase. I had some parents who asked me what a bookcase was. That's the sort of level we're talking at, okay? So immediately I knew, because they wrote so well. And the best writers, and let's face it, how are we examined, how are our children examined? Largely through writing, okay? The best writers are those children that are brought up in a house which has bookcases all over the place. Okay, so I was just thinking, is there any way that, you know, we could maybe work with schools to get them to have some sort of parents club, to get them into reading and get them to understand the importance of it?
Yes, I fully agree. And I think it's often the parents that we do struggle to enthuse with reading, because the children are, in a way, the easy ones, because we go into schools already and we go to assemblies and we tell them about the summer reading challenge that every year happening right now. And we'll engage with at least 5,000 children during the summer, which is absolutely fantastic. But clearly there's a lot more than 5,000 children in the city. So we're only actually reaching a small portion. Reaching the parents is really hard. And I would love to investigate that further. And I'd love to work with you if you'd be interested to do that, because I'd love to be able to get our service out there, break down any barrier that people have. If people have had a bad experience at school, when they become an adult, you shy away from those things. And I want to break all of those barriers down. That would be my plan.
Thank you very much. Best offer I had all evening. Thank you.
Fantastic. Nice to hear. Last but not least, Lewis, you've been waiting.
Thank you. Yeah, very happy to sum up, because I've got a recommendation too for the end. I think I really struggle with this report. I think my main issue with it is you've built here a really, really good set of principles and a really good idea for what the library service should be and what it needs to look like and how it needs to evolve with changing use. But there's not, I think it'd be bold in the kindest possible way to say it's a plan, because there is no deliverable in this report. There is no measure for success. There is no understanding or surveys of any residents, what they think. None of that data is in this report. So I think the recommendation for this report is that we give you comments on how this report be better. It needs to have the data for the assertions you've made at the beginning, and it needs to have current data sets of what your measurables are, what your targets are, and how we're going to measure that. Because in its current form, we could pass this, you could come back in 2 years, and I'd have no way of knowing whether or not the library service was better or worse, because there isn't any commitments really in the report. I would also like to say I've seen reports like this in the past where they can be a bit sketchy, and it's especially usually around funding things. And my colleagues either side of me are making a good point about libraries need to be open, but there is a reason why libraries have closed slowly, gradually over the past 10, 15 years. So as we know, local government just doesn't have the funding, and there's nothing in this report, although it's very optimistic about new sources of income. There's nothing in the report for how we're going to make that work financially. I'd love to have all the libraries, and all 11 of them, open 50, 60 hours a week. But if we've not got a real fundamental plan for where the money's going to come from, or how we're going to find the money, how we're going to find the revenue, then the report has no purpose.
Yes. Okay. Is there you're okay with the answer? Yeah. Thank you very much. We really have got to move on time-wise, and we have a couple of questions of Councillor Cadley.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Graham, I wanted to follow up what Councillor Allison just said. I mean, I was thinking that Alice is a fictional person. She's an aspiration, and I understand why. You give some examples in the report about some other organisations like Bernardo's and Age UK using the library, using our libraries. I wanted to understand how that work has led to your thoughts about the various options, various changes that you might make to the library based on that. That seems to me to really underpin this plan. Could you just give me some sort of explanation?
Of course. I think that we recognise that we are stronger by working with partners than we are by ourselves, and we see members of the public every day coming into our library buildings who are presenting with great need often and don't actually know where to go to get that help. And library staff feel quite helpless at being able to offer anything more than the library service that we're there to provide. So the idea is to try and join services up so that actually Alice is a fictional person, but actually based so much on fact. So there are countless customers that use a library in exactly that position. And the idea that we could actually, in the library, if I'm going to take Peveril Library as an example, this customer comes in and they don't really want to use the library to borrow a book, but they're lonely, they don't know what to do, they want some help. At the moment, we can signpost people to other locations, and then it's up to them to take that option up. We would love for that facility to be within the library building as well, so that actually we say, it's okay, come and sit and have a cup of tea, talk about it with a trained professional, perhaps from Live Well or a mental health or a friendship group or another organisation, and actually start to join up the whole sort of concept of help and reaching sort of before customers and others reach a crisis point. I suppose I've not worded that very well. I'm sorry I've not articulated it well, but the idea is that we're there for people and we don't want anybody to be turned away.
I'm grateful for the answer, and I understand what you were saying, even notwithstanding what you said about the way that you'd phrased the reply. Is there some kind of just linking back to what Councillor Anderson was asking about data and the kind of things that you're basing this report upon? Is there something more than what sounds from what you're describing to be sort of anecdotal things, you know, library staff sort of feeding back occasionally, look, we had a really sad case in, and so on and so forth? I just want to be clearer about the basis on which you're building this plan.
In terms of coming back on both those 2 points, Councillor Allison and Councillor Cudahy, the purpose of bringing the report today was to get some ideas from you and also an endorsement in terms of this is the right direction. So I think we have that in terms of the responses we've had. There's clearly more work to be done in terms of making this a report fit for purpose in identifying the nitty-gritty in making sure that our libraries are sustainable and worthy of places that residents can use in terms of the council services, as Graham has just mentioned. So we have some work to go away and do, work that's already happening in terms of consultation with staff, consultation with library users and our partners. And the partners are wide-ranging, and you're right, we need to capture that so that there's a real flavour of that within the final document.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Cotton. Bye. Grace, did you want?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to ask, on that report, I didn't see anything about people whose English isn't first language. Yeah. So do we have facilities in the libraries to support people whose English is a second language, basically?
Thank you for your question. Since taking up the portfolio in May, I've had discussions with Graham and his team about doing some more outreach work rather than expecting some of our communities to come into the library you were saying earlier, library staff need to go out, and there are a number of community groups who want to access the resources and maybe need some help in doing that. So that is a project that is ongoing. We're hoping to work with groups from September to identify the need, first of all, to identify what's already being done, because there are lots of council services already engaged with different communities, and mapping where, as a library service, we can help that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blythe, for replying. We got one more question. We have to move on after that. I saw Councillor Rory again.
Sorry, this one's just a point of clarification on my initial recommendation about that. Can that move forward, or is there something that needs to go? Because I think it addresses a couple of the questions regarding culture and getting parents involved with the My First Library card, for example.
It can move forward right now. Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry, yes, so just about to jump in with that. So the first recommendation I've got down is Councillor Rory's, this is a draft version at the moment, but around exploring barriers to sort of opting in, sort of how do we get young people into libraries and things like that. Is that are you wanting to put that forward as a formal recommendation?
I think I'd specifically want to put a recommendation to look into a My First Library card at birth.
No, vote of hands, please. Sorry, I didn't hear. No. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. Any abstentions? No, so that's correct.
Any against?
Any against? Before I said that, no. Nobody against? Motion carried, yeah?
And then the second recommendation from Councillor Allison was around the need to have sort of data and measurable measures I've written down for achievements as part of the plan, and then a part of that plan around revenue. Again, it's just a draft, but are you happy to put that forward as a recommendation?
Yeah, for sure. I think I accept what Councillor Blight has said in terms of there's going to be further work to come. I think I'd just like to make sure that that's done formally. Maybe it comes back. Maybe the next report that has that detailing comes back to us, and we have a discussion about it, so that we can ensure that we're supporting you and that it's moving in the right direction. As you heard from colleagues here, it's obviously a very an issue that's very important to a lot of people, and we get a lot of feedback on. So I'm happy to recommend that.
Second again, Tom? Second by Angie Smith. There's Angie Smith. And show of hands, yeah?
So four first.
Item 4 first. Sorry.
So,
oh, right, sorry. 4, hands for. And against. And abstain. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Everyone happy for what we've done so far? Well, it's just a habit again, isn't it? So everyone happy, yeah? Thank you very much.
Panel is adjourning and reconvening in 5 minutes.
Right.
Should I go inside and just check?
Yeah, she's got the cigarettes. Like, right, everyone okay, carry on. That's probably not the best idea in the world. I just thought everyone's a bit hot and whatever, toilet breaks, that sort of thing. So, right, moving on to item number 8, which is enforcement of parking restrictions near schools. Item 8 is an enforcement of parking restrictions near schools. Unfortunately, Councillor Stevens, the Cabinet Member for Strategic Planning and Transport, is unable to join us today. However, he has prepared a statement for the panel, which can be read by Councillor Briarsdale. Any actions, recommendations or questions which officers are not able to suitably answer in Councillor Stevens' absence will be forwarded on to him and responses shared with the panel. Councillor Stevens will return to the panel at a future date to bring an update on this item once the programme of work has progressed. I now hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to echo the Chair's comments and apologies that John wasn't able to make it today. He'd sent apologies in advance. I'm very pleased to be here in his stead. As has already been said, I'm by no means a parking expert myself, but I'm pleased to be here on behalf of the Cabinet, and I will make sure that I feedback any comments through to John directly as well. John's written a few words that he's asked me to read out on his behalf. I apologise for my absence today due to a pre-arranged commitment. Following full council's approval of a motion on notice in November 2025, officers were asked to explore resources to support stronger enforcement of parking restrictions, particularly outside schools. Members also endorsed a joint public awareness campaign with schools to encourage considerate parking, to improve road safety and promote responsible behaviour during drop-off and pick-up times. Council also requested a report to Scrutiny setting out actions taken, enforcement activity undertaken and recommendations for further improvements. The need for safe driving and parking around schools remains a priority. School arrival and departure times are among the busiest periods on local roads, and poor parking, unsafe stopping and dangerous manoeuvres can put children, families and other road users at risk. Safe and considerate parking helps in many ways to protect children, families and school staff, maintain visibility for drivers, pedestrians and school crossing patrol officers where they are in place, to reduce congestion near schools and surrounding streets, maintain access for emergency and service vehicles and to promote positive road safety behaviours. Parents and carers are encouraged to park responsibly, observe speed limits, avoid obstructive or unsafe parking, and consider walking, wheeling, or parking further away where appropriate. Schools also play an important role in educating children about road safety, helping them develop safe travel habits, recognise hazards, and travel with greater confidence and independence. This report before scrutiny today outlines the measures implemented to date, including increased enforcement activity where concerns have been the greatest. It highlights the results achieved and sets out plans for ongoing communication and engagement to support safer behaviour around schools. I would like to thank in particular Plymouth Schools for their continued partnership with the Council's road safety and parking teams. Their support has been vital in raising awareness and promoting safer practices around school gates. These measures form part of our longer-term commitment to improving road safety, encouraging responsible parking and helping to keep children safe. I recommend inviting representatives from participating schools to a future scrutiny panel meeting to share their experiences and hopefully the impact of this work. I now hand over to Darren Stoneman, who's the Civil Enforcement Manager, and Mike Jones, who is online, Senior Traffic Engineer, who will be presenting the programme and its outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to provide you with an update on the enforcement of highways near to schools. Thank you. The motion of notice had 3 actions: 1 to increase and improve the enforcement near schools, 2 to deliver a public awareness campaign, and 3 to report back evidence, outcomes and recommendations. I'll cover point 1 and my colleague Mike will cover points 2 and 3. School enforcement update. Firstly, I think it's important to give a context to the key challenges that we face. Currently, we have responsibility for enforcing parking restrictions around 83 schools across the city. This presents a significant operational challenge, particularly during the concentrated morning and afternoon school run periods, when demand for enforcement is its highest. The removal of localised school allocation. Historically, children were allocated to school based on geographical locations. This meant that most children were able to walk to school. This is now not the case, and this has led to significant school time congestion and parking stress. Our enforcement resource is limited. We must balance school enforcement against wider parking priorities across the city, including city centre enforcement, residential concerns, safety issues, and our statutory duties. It is therefore impossible to maintain a permanent presence at every school. The primary issue remains driver behaviour. Despite signage, restrictions, education campaigns, some motorists continue to park on yellow lines, zigzags, markings, footways, and in locations that create safety risks for children, parents, and other road users. There are legislative limitations on what civil enforcement officers can enforce. Certain issues reported by schools and residents may fall under police powers rather than civil enforcement parking powers, which can sometimes create public expectations that exceed our abilities and our legal authority. Providing dedicated enforcement at every school would require significant additional resources and staffing. Any increase in coverage must be considered alongside budget pressures and the need to deliver value for money across all parking enforcement activities. We do continue to receive complaints from residents living near to schools regarding obstructive parking, blocked driveways, parking on verges and footways, and vehicle congestion. These concerns are often concentrated within short periods during school drop-off and pick-up times. The recruitment and retaining officers remains challenging. The role requires working in difficult environments, dealing with confrontation, operating during peak periods. Recruitment challenges directly impact on our ability to expand our dedicated enforcement teams. Next slide, please. Our enforcement strategy has changed over the last 18 months. We now have dedicated school enforcement officer. One of our key achievements has been the introduction of this officer working in the Ham and Peveril ward. This has provided a more focused approach to tackling school parking issues, improving engagements with schools, and allowing us to respond more effectively to concerns raised by the head teachers, parents, and residents in these areas. We have deployed an attended camera system. The deployment of an attended camera enforcement system has enhanced our ability to monitor and enforce restrictions at key locations. These have been used across 8 schools so far over the last 18 months. The technology provides an additional enforcement tool, capturing contraventions in areas where traditional enforcement can be challenging and increasing driver compliance. We've also significantly increased foot patrols around schools during peak drop-off and pick-up periods. Visible officer presence often acts as a deterrent and helps address unsafe parking behaviours before they become established. Our school enforcement resources are now more intelligence-led. We work closely with the road safety team to identify locations where parking behaviour presents the greatest risk. This allows us to prioritise enforcement activity where it can have the most positive impact on child and pedestrian safety. We've been working in partnership with local police community support officers to strengthen our approach and strengthen our presence around schools. Joint patrols provide reassurance to schools and residents, whilst enabling a coordinated response to wider road safety and community concerns. Management teams have undertaken joint visits with head teachers to better understand the specific challenges faced at individual schools. This has improved relationships, increased accountability, and ensured that enforcement strategies are aligned with local needs and concerns. My officers have attended school fairs and community events to promote road safety awareness. These engagements provide opportunities to educate parents and children about safe parking practices, encourage voluntarily compliance within parking restrictions. You may have seen as you came in this evening the camera safety car deployed at the front of the council house. This car has been increased its deployment to ensure that we enhance our ability to manage multiple school locations effectively. This vehicle provides greater coverage across the city and supports targeted enforcement at known hotspot locations. Our enforcement approach has become more flexible and more responsive. Resources can be redeployed quickly in response to complaints, emerging issues, road safety concerns, or intelligence received from school and residents. This enables us to maximise our effectiveness of our available resources while maintaining a focus on safety. In summary, the initiatives demonstrate our commitment to improving road safety around schools through a combination of enforcement, education, technology and partnership working, and targeted resource deployment. Whilst challenges remain, these measures have strengthened our ability to address inappropriate parking behaviour and create a safer environment for children, parents and our local communities. This last slide from myself highlights the improvements that we've seen. I say improvements, but actually every time we issue a ticket is actually a failure on us to be able to keep the roads safe. But the Camry safety car has issued 74 penalty charge notices. Attended enforcement has issued 154 penalty charge notices. The dedicated school officer working in Ham and Peveril has issued 327 penalty charge notices. School Keep Clear contraventions have increased by 40% over the last 12 months in the last academic years. And the total penalty charge notices issued at school pickup times have increased by 17%. So these figures represent the 25-26 academic year to date. So this shows that we are taking enforcement around our schools seriously. And whilst it is a battle that we will continue to fight, it is a battle that is becoming increasingly difficult with the increased level of commuting between schools and work, both at drop-off and collection time. I'll now hand over to my colleague Mike, who will talk to you about his road safety strategy and his awareness campaigns.
Good evening, everybody. I have been asked to get through this bit as quickly as possible, which won't affect the questions if you wish, but so I'll start off. My name's Mike Jones. I oversee the road safety team for Plymouth Highways. We have 2 road safety officers, and we also have a child pedestrian training team. That's 3 people, one coordinator and 2 part-time during term people that go into school and train the children in primary schools. That's currently funded by Vision Zero Southwest, but we are looking to take that on as a permanent part of Plymouth Highways in 2 years' time. We're working on a campaign which is planned to launch in the September term, and we're working with the Cabinet member and our communications team to actually come up with that material, and we'll be going to schools in September with that engagement. That involves a Safer Journeys to School leaflet. We've got child pedestrian training as well. May well be filming, which is something we work with Vision Zero as well, because they work closely with the police producing film material. And of course, we go into schools on a regular basis anyway for pupil engagement. The idea of the child pedestrian training is that if you get them on the ground floor, you get them young, you can instill a basic road safety attitude. So could I have the next slide, please? So the road safety team visits schools. We give road safety advice and educational talks. We also lend out, or it's more like a permanent loan, parking buddies. And there's a slide later on that shows you what those are. We undertake risk assessments and advice and in partnership working with schools. The team undertakes an annual casualty reduction review that looks at every road in the city. So we have a criteria that we operate under the road safety ROSPA, which is the Royal Society for Prevention of Accidents. So that enables us to risk-based targeting of resources. We monitor enforcement and engagement outcomes and work closely with Darren's team, reporting anything that comes to us in terms of need for enforcement. And that enables us to focus our resources where they have the greatest impact. The aim of that is reduction in casualties, reduction in parking complaints, and enhanced pedestrian awareness as safer journeys to school. Can I have the next slide, please? Right, it's entitled Numbers Game. So the child pedestrian training team, currently we've trained over 800 pupils. Each pupil gets 5 hours training. And that's over 4,000 hours of child pedestrian training achieved. So 12 schools are in our Safer Journeys to School campaign, and we've currently delivered 4 Safer Streets schemes. So that would be Stewart Road, Torbridge, and Primary and Canbridge schools, St Paul's in Barn Lane, and Compton Primary School. We're currently engaging with Mount Street Primary at the moment. That'll be the next one. With child pedestrian training, we have sessions booked now until October this year, and we're looking for but we've got the schools coming back every year for more sessions. The one thing I would say about child pedestrian training is that when we did initially engage with schools, we thought that we would be looking at one child pedestrian trainer per two children. What actually happens in some areas, in some parts of the city, we have up to 50% of the children in the schools have got special educational needs. So it sometimes means that if we take a child out, we actually have to have 2 child pedestrian trainers per child. So that's something that we were not initially expecting, and I think that it's probably something that is a focus since COVID. This is that generation. Next slide, please. So this is pictures of the visible outcomes. This is a class that's the child pedestrian training coordinator Tanya, who's there at the back with that in the school there, and they've got the leaflet. Vision Zero, they're paying for it, so we've got them there at the moment, and the Safer Journeys to School leaflet. Example of our it's the Ricky the road safety dog. One of our team members gets into that costume and is there with the children at the side of the road there. Next slide, please. So report back with evidence, outcomes and recommendations. So continued delivery of school-based enforcement officers, which is, as Darren has mentioned earlier, and updated. Update to portfolio holders and ward councillors. That's aimed for December this year. Data-led enforcement strategy. So as mentioned earlier, we get the data, we have the complaints and the observations from the school, and that's programme for November this year. Increased digital enforcement. That's I think Darren's already covered that, but the fact that we've got digital enforcement cameras that can be moved around and can actually enforce the school clear markings, and to continue to deliver where appropriate school safer streets, and update on successes to the portfolio holder in December 2026. I think that's the last slide. Oh yes, and if you look down there in the right hand side, those are the parking buddies. That's outside I think it's Prince Rock Primary there. So we purchased them. They come in at around about £140 each, and we actually provide them to schools on permanent loan. We've done that to quite a few schools across the city. I think that's the last slide. Happy to take any questions, and I'm sure my colleague Darren will be as well.
Thank you very much for that. If I can ask Councillor Cusie.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not sure if this is for Darren or for Mike. I recognise it was a motion on notice that's triggered all of this work. But part 3 of this programme is to identify the evidence that justifies the various steps that you're taking. And I recognise you've got to do the day-to-day stuff. This kind of issue does cause problems. These kinds of situations around schools do cause problems. But I just want to understand actually what the real danger is to children, because you can say a car parked on double yellow lines equals a danger to a child, but that isn't necessarily so, of course. So what statistics or what information can you provide about actual accidents involving children in and around schools?
Children generally are slightly safer outside schools than in the rest of their journey to school. The reason for that is that there is always that level of activity around schools, and parking could actually have some effect on that too. But the parking happens around schools in large areas in some parts of the city, and it's particularly with secondary school children that is an issue. But mean, you're making a valid point. I mean, the fact that you've got parking outside schools does slow traffic down. But it also creates visibility issues as well. So if children are having to park across the road and they're having to do it between parked cars, that's one of the things that we're doing in terms of our intervention with the child pedestrian training team, is to teach them where's the safest place to park. To cross the road. We don't expect them to cross the road themselves because we're talking about quite young children here, but it's given them that initial those initial tools, and so a lot of them take it home to their parents, and we do have interaction with them in other venues as well. So I'm not sure that I can answer exactly the question you're answering.
Mike, it doesn't sound like you can. I mean, we all understand why there are 20-mile-an-hour zones around schools, why there are key clear areas, why there might be double yellow lines. What I'm interested in is, do you have any evidence of how frequently children are hit by cars, injured by cars, put at serious risk by cars?
We can certainly provide that evidence. It will form part of the reports that are coming through later on in the year.
I recognise, to be fair, that's flagged up as part 3 of this project, if I can call it that way. That you've dealt with part 1, part 2's in progress, part 3's yet to come. So yeah, I mean, subject to the chair and colleagues on the committee, I would like to see that evidence as a final point. Can I just come back to a couple of other points? The stats that you provided in relation to parking charge notices. So I'm looking at page 53 of the bundle. I think it's page 5 of your presentation, or it would have been slide 5. Have I understood this right? That the total parking charge notices issued at school pickup time of 6,469 during the academic year of 2026. Those tickets are issued to cars illegally parked or inappropriately parked in and around schools.
Yeah,
Darren,
I'll take that on, Councillor. Yes, it is a snapshot of enforcement between the hours of 2:30 and 4 o'clock.
Right. So
but it is only direct issue tickets, so this won't include those tickets that are issued by camera. So the majority, I would say probably 60-65% of enforcement between 2:30 and 3:30, 4 o'clock is in the locale of schools.
Right. Okay.
So that is a pretty reasonable, realistic figure.
So about 60% of that would be what sort of?
Probably about 3,500 to 4,000.
Yeah. Okay. And the cost of a ticket is 70 quid.
It's depends. It can either be £50 or £75, dependent upon. Sorry, £70 or £50, dependent upon whether it's parked in a residence bay close to a school without a permit, or parked on WL lines. The severity of the contravention means that the fine is lower or higher, and that's obviously halved if it's paid within 28 days.
Yeah, and the keep clear contraventions, are they part of that total PCN number, or are they separate?
I separated them as part of the attended camera and the camera car, because the cameras can only enforce school keep clears close to schools, so they would be purely based on school keep clear contraventions.
Yeah, I mean, but just a sort of back of the envelope calculation, that's about 150,000-200,000 £200,000 a year, isn't it, on penalty charge notices to parents, carers, all in and around schools.
It is a very expensive process if you decide not to park safely or considerately close to a school.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to be operating as much of a deterrent, though, just looking at those figures for 2 consecutive years.
I think it is reflective of society as a whole, that our enforcement generally has increased by a significant level over the last 18 months. Just off the top of my head, in 24, we issued 65,000 tickets as a city annually, and last year it was 82,000. We've not changed our processes. We've become maybe a little bit smarter, but it does show that the parking contravention, penalty charge notice isn't necessarily a deterrent. It is seen as an inconvenience rather than stopping somebody.
The slides indicated that Darren and Mike, you're both trying to allocate resources to this particular issue following the motion on notice and so Are you getting any extra resources from this additional money that's coming in from parking charge notices in and around schools? I recognise that there are specific rules about what the council can do with the income it receives from that sort of issue. But can you help?
Yeah, firstly, I think the notice on motion only enabled us a formal opportunity to show what we've done. Both the current portfolio and the previous portfolio were really passionate about the activities that we undertook or undertake outside of schools. So this is just an opportunity for us to formalise and show the efforts that we're making. In terms of resources, it's not really about the money in terms of the dedicated school enforcement officers. It's the appetite when we recruit to the role. I've been out to recruit on 3 occasions for dedicated school enforcement officers. The working pattern and the reputation of what my officers face on a day-to-day basis doesn't make it an attractive role to recruit to. So we were able to recruit one, Matt, who's been incredibly successful. But the further 2 rounds of recruitment, we didn't receive a single applicant on either round of recruitment. So I am now recruiting additional enforcement officers with the view to manipulating their duties during the day to cover the schools.
Right.
So money's not an issue. We have sufficient to cover our needs. It is about finding the resource who wish to come to work for us.
Chair, I'm conscious I've asked a number of questions, and I'm grateful for you giving me the time to do that. I'm only going to ask one more. There's a lot more I could ask, but I want to give other members a chance to come in. On the list of actions that we saw on one of the slides, there was a reference to PCSOs. Now, of course, PCSOs don't really have much enforcement power, if any, really, in relation to double yellow lines and parking on keep clear areas. It's very much council issue, isn't it? So I just wonder if you can explain why the PCSOs are going along with this. Your previous answer might have given us an indication, Darren, but I'd be grateful if you could explain.
I like to make it easy for the public and for councillors. If there's paint on the floor, it's my responsibility. If there's no paint on the floor, then it's the responsibility of the police. So such things such as parking across a footpath near a school. If there's double yellow lines alongside that footpath, it's my responsibility. If it's not, then the PCSO can issue an FPN for highway obstruction. So there are defined issues. One of the major issues that my staff face is violence and aggression, and it's a growing issue. So having a joint patrol with the police and PCSOs does not only portray a public image of joint at working, but it also provides slightly more assurance to my staff when they're out there dealing with those issues on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I just be aware we are very, very good short time, so if we keep the questions as quick and as brief as possible, and the answers as well, will be much appreciated. But obviously, please give your question over. Angela Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Can I just say thank you so much for this. This is music to my ears. I do the granny run every Tuesday to pick up 2 of my beautiful younger grandchildren. I know time is short, but I just thank you so much for doing this, because one of my little granddaughters, when she was 5, I literally just whisked her away as a great big people carrier. And I know where this person lives. He actually lives closer to the school than I do. Sort of mounted the pavement and nearly knocked her for 6. And I would rather that we have these things put in place before a child is killed, rather than waiting for, oh, how many accidents have we had? And then, right, we better do something about it. So my question is, St Margaret's Road, for example, is lethal. It's not right by the school, but if you live that way in Woodford, you have to cross over it. Cars speed up there. Could we, I understand, if I'm wrong, I apologise, but would it be possible to have those 20-mile-an-hour speed limits made compulsory? Because my understanding is they're advisory. Is that correct?
Yes, although they do enable enforcement by the police to be undertaken under, I think it's some driving without due care and attention. But generally, they're very successful. I think that the issue with it is it's a very expensive issue to introduce properly either engineered or enforced 20-mile-an-hour zones. And the other issue with that is that outside schools, it's only, I mean, we have to think about how the drivers perceive this. So if you have an enforceable 20-mile-an-hour zone around a school, and it operates 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, when it's only actually relevant twice a day during term time, that does mean that drivers tend to disregard it. So, and you've got a credibility issue there, hence the flashing amber signs that we've put up.
Yeah, yes, sorry, I think you misunderstood. I wasn't expecting it to be 24/7. I was meaning, could it be made compulsory round about the school opening school day and the end of the school day? Sorry, I didn't make that clear. Just one more thing. I think pedestrian crossings, like we could do with more pedestrian crossings, because you see, because where all the cars park, you can't help but have to peer out with cars zooming up there. And they do speed terribly along this road. You know, so you're having to cross the road dangerously. Is there any way we could have some more pedestrian crossings near the schools?
Well, that's a matter of finance in many respects. A pedestrian crossing, so like a basic zebra crossing, comes in at round about the 70 to 100,000 pound mark. Sometimes they cost more. We have a very small budget in the road safety team, and indeed for the traffic management team. I mean, St Margaret's Road, Larkham Lane is right next to that. It's the crossing that we put in on Larkham Lane near Farm Close, something like 4 or 5 years ago. That came in at over £80,000 then.
Right.
So you could appreciate that.
We've got to round this up in a second. We've got so many questions, so we need to move on.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Quick couple of questions. The first one is about the campaign launch planned in the autumn with cabinet members and communication team. I'm just wondering if teams are going into schools, what options there would be for those local councillors who are interested to be actually involved and be part of that. And secondly, in terms of the very point that was made by Darren Stoneman there about pupils coming from a long distance to come into schools, is there any sort of intention to link up some of this with some of the really good stuff that you've been doing on bikeability and cycling to school for those older children in secondary school?
Quite a wide-ranging couple of questions there. The September date is actually getting quite close, I admit. Councillor Stevens has been working very closely with Suzanne Keith in my team, and also I believe that working with the communications team as well. So that it's all under development at the moment. There'll certainly be opportunity for local councillors to contribute. I mean, and going into schools, we would be talking to the local councillors, letting them know what it is that we're intending to do. Sorry, the second question was about children that are older,
linking up
bikeability
and extending that, encourage as much as possible to improve
well, we do
to school by bike rather than by parents' car.
I mean, bikeability is something that is handled by a separate part of the council to my team. However, we do work closely with the team that's delivering that. That's delivered through something called Plymouth. However, my team do go into schools at the end of each term, each summer term, and basically give lessons and lectures to children that are just about to go up to secondary school, because the children that are most at risk are the ones that they've left primary school and they're going to secondary school. They're either walking, sometimes they're cycling, or they're catching the bus. They're often on their own for the first time, and there's all those skills that they need to learn and pick up, and the lessons that they need to learn. And that's why we go in at that point to try and just put some of those ideas and those warnings into their heads before they break up for the summer. And of course, breaking up for summer, they're just interested in going and having a good time for six weeks. But when they come back, that's when we need to get them. I mean, that there's a similar type of issue with something called Learn to Live, which is introduced for pre-drivers, and that's something where I think we hit something like, this is a Vision Zero, cross the Vision Zero, so that's Devon, Cornwall, Plymouth and Torbay, but every year we target around 6,000 teenagers with lectures which involve the police, ambulance service, fire brigades, witnesses and people that have actually been affected by accidents and injuries. So, and the road safety teams go in as well. So that's another strand to what we do. That's all supported by Vision Zero as well. I'm sure we can provide members with more information on all of that if people are interested. It's a very wide topic and there's a lot going on.
Can I just say that literally we're going to be able to give this another sort of 5 minutes or so because we're conscious of time. So if you can keep our answers more super specifics rather than put around the bush, questions and answers, if we can just keep it more bullet pointed just for a minute because we're getting very, very short of time. And I'd like to get through every question possible. Next question is from Lewis.
Super quick, Chair. A couple of things. On action 3, I'm not really clear what the data-led enforcement strategy is, what form that's going to take. So the other ones have got, you've got a report coming to the portfolio holder, a report coming to the portfolio holder and ward councillors. What form is the data-led enforcement strategy? Is that something that's going to go to Cabinet via scrutiny, or is that just a report that's going to be provided to the portfolio holder? And the second one, I'm clear that this is a report that's come from a motion on notice. Can I pass a recommendation that the report is passed on to the people who passed that motion, because I'm not sure they're aware this has been brought to the scrutiny meeting or that this element of their motion has been completed. So I just want to make sure that they receive that.
Thank
you. The data-led element of this is what we get day to day. It comes in to my team and indeed to Darren's team. We get the information. We also do an annual casualty reduction review, so we know where people are getting hurt. We know where children in particular are being hurt around the city, and that enables us to target where we ask Darren and his team to enforce, and indeed where we could look to intervene ourselves. I mean, we do put pedestrian crossings in, but not as many as we would like by a long call. And also we put in a lot of drop crossings around the city. And where there's journeys to school, we would look to target the logical routes that people would follow in order to get to school by walking in a logical way. So the targeted enforcement, I mean, Darren, you've got your hand up there.
Yeah, Chair, if I just say, Councillor, what I think we'll do is just maybe formalise a document that shows what we look at, how we look at it, and how we then decide to deploy. I think that's what you're asking for. So I think, yeah, we'll certainly put the bones on something along those lines so that it's not just a waffly figures, that we give you a succinct process that Mike's team and mine will follow to determine who gets what and when.
Is that amicable for you? Yep. Excellent. Next question is from Councillor Sarish Aruni.
Sorry, yeah, Rory, thank you. Sorry, I'll be really quick with this one. I think one of the reasons that enforcement can be difficult is because fundamentally penalty charges are regressive. So it's a set price, it's like £50. And so some families that will hit significantly, and for some families that will not. And I think, can I make a recommendation that we start looking into potentially more progressive penalty charges, such as for repeat offenders, you look into like a driving licence like a penalty point. If you're going to have like digital enforcement as well, that's something you can look into to ensure that it's actually like
I think they're more national items. That would be not more local.
I would love to, but unfortunately the Road Traffic Act stipulates exactly how and when we can fine and what we can fine. There is a pilot in Bournemouth as we speak, where they have taken a significantly higher level of enforcement charges. But as it stands at the moment, the government dictate to us that it's £70 and £50, and we have no other measures, unfortunately.
Okay, apologies, appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next question is Councillor Mark Coker, please.
Thank you. I will be very quick. But what I do like is sitting here for everyone asking questions and praising what we've done when I was the instigator of everything that we did when I was cabinet member for transport. My two quick questions is, Darren, you talked about the police PCSOs. Do they go where you ask them? Because around all the schools that I visit, they're never there. So my kind of thing is, this is paid by Vision Zero, which is a joint approach between the council and the police. So are we targeting the police to do other things on their own? Because my belief is that they'll only do it if you ask them. And the second thing is that, again, all the bikeability, sustrans training, everything we introduced when I was cabinet member and going into schools, years ago, schools had transport plans for their children. That seems to have gone out the window now, and that we have taken over as a local authority doing everything on transport, and the schools are saying to us, I've got an issue with transport outside my school, what are you going to do about it? So I just wondered whether or not schools still have plans for how they get their children safely into school, and what they're doing in school to do it to help us deliver that message.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take point one, and Mike can take point two. Point one was about PCSOs. I think there's a distinct split, and a lot of it is councillor-led. So there are some councillors, Efford Ward is a prime example, who are very, very close to their PCSO, and they will make demands of the PCSO to support the council. Where we come across issues, particularly where we have aggression towards enforcement officers, then I will request that support from the police. There is not a natural wish for the police to be seen at school gates supporting us because of operational priorities, but it's something I'm hopeful with as we move forward, that they may become slightly more attuned to how we wish to work.
Okay, all right, does that answer your question? Yeah. Thank you very much. Last question, and then we're going to have to move on.
Would you like me to answer the other question that Councillor Coker had with respect to school travel plans?
Yes, because I think that's really important for councillors when they visit their schools to be able to say, you want X, Y, and Z. Show me what you're doing in your school travel plan.
If you can keep it brief, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, this is historic, really. School travel plans were something that was introduced in sort of 2008. There was funding attached to it. I know when I worked for Devon County Council at the time, we had a whole team of school travel plan officers that went into schools across Devon. Each school was allocated at the time, I think, £5,000 if they actually produced a school travel plan. I think that the only way that you get a school travel plan now, although we've still got the historic ones, is if there's a planning application and the school can then be told they need to provide one before they have an extension and that sort of thing. So that is unfortunately where we are at the moment.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So in other words, we've got no power, so there isn't one. So that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Coker. Right, the last question on and we are definitely moving on. That's Councillor Cathy Watkin.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it seems to me that it's the parents that are actually causing the contraventions outside the school. Clearly, money is no object to them, and teaching the children is, okay, but it's not actually going to stop them parking. So, what work is actually being carried out with the parents to stop them?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Our enforcement strategy is advise first before we enforce. So we will always discuss, if we come across a motorist who's in contravention, they're in the car, a parent waiting, we will ask them to move and explain the reasons why they need to move. If they then refuse to move or are constantly repeating their behaviour, then they will be issued with a fine. Unfortunately, the law it's quite clear that if they're in contravention, they should get a financial penalty. We have no other tools available to us other than for that brief conversation with them. As a manager of the service, I attend schools regularly and speak to parents, and unfortunately, they're not the most receptive of people when it comes to trying to discuss why it's not safe for them to park where they're parked, particularly in schools in your ward where there aren't many car parks close to the schools, and road safety is a real concern.
I can add to that slightly in that experience on the road safety side over the years has been that particularly young children have their own superpower. It's called pester power, and if we can get into their heads, they then take it home to their parents. We've had evidence of that at the Finton Feds that we've attended over the summer, because we've actually seen children that we've given training to during the year, and they've got their parents with them, and then the parents do say, I've been told that I shouldn't park next to the school. So it's that sort of thing, but it's at the margin, I think, unfortunately.
Do the teachers or the head teacher have any influence at all with the parents, and can they actually put this over? Does this happen?
I think that's a moot point, really.
Yeah, Councillor, I did email or produce an email for a newsletter for a school in Egg Buckland, and I'd like to say that I'm not viral, but that has gone around to a number of schools who have plagiarised my words and sent them out in newsletters for children, and it's something I'm always willing to do just to try to help.
We really need to move on now. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to call it a day on that side of it all now. Move on to the next agenda because we've only got less than half an hour to go.
Sorry,
Otherwise, we'll
Chair,
be locked in here.
I realise you want to move on. Can we just do with recommendations, which I think Charlie's already thinking.
Right, so thank you for all your questions. Recommendations, just about to read it out. All right. The report set out recommendations around the continuation of the work and the focus on driving change into poor parking behaviours around schools. Are we happy to endorse these? Yeah. I propose that we do, but can I have a seconder, please? Andrew, sir? All those for? All those against? Any abstentions? Then does anyone have any further recommendations they'd like to propose?
So I've got one recommendation down at the moment from Councillor Cuddihy, in that could the report after sort of stage 3 come back to the panel with the sort of data and things like that? Are you?
Yeah,
if
we could specifically just request evidence of harms.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Sorry.
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Quick show of hands, please. And against? And abstain? Sorry, I thought I already did it, but obviously do it again. All right. We really need to be, I'm very, very sorry new people's just come in now. We have gone over time, so I apologise for that. You know, one of them things, and if I could ask you, if you can sort of keep it a bit brief, that'd be brilliant. All right, item 9 on food waste. I'd like to introduce Councillor Briers Delve, the Cabinet Member for Environmental and Climate Change, to present the food waste report. We also have Martin Hoare, Fleet Service Manager, and Rachel Hawadi, I hope I said that correctly, Senior Project Manager in Support. So over to you, Councillor Briers Delve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here representing something we've actually been working on. So food waste is something that we have been busy planning basically since the start of this administration, and it's been really exciting over the last year to be starting to phase that in. I'm aware that time is short, so I'm just going to cover a few initial points by way of introduction, and we made the decision to skip the slides on this one because you already have quite a comprehensive report which hopefully has covered the main background. I want to start off with a bit of positivity about 5 reasons why I think we should all be incredibly excited that Plymouth finally has food waste. The first one is basically one of the biggest FAQs we get on this, which is that this is a better level of service for all of your residents. So we sometimes get people who say food waste is smelly, isn't this going to make it smell more? At the end of the day, it's the same food waste, the peelings, the plate scrapings that previously they put in the brown bin, collected twice as regularly. And so even if you have residents who are less interested in the environmental benefits and some of the other factors, just point out this is collections twice as regularly as what we previously had with the brown bins. Secondly, I think it's an exciting opportunity for residents. It's a chance to see quite how much all of us throw out from our fridges. We all like to think we have very little food waste, and as soon as you start putting that in the bin, in the caddies, you start to realise how that piles up, and therefore there's an opportunity for residents to save money on their supermarket bills, to think a little bit more about meal planning, and to bring down their food bills in a time of a cost of living crisis. Thirdly, there's also a saving to PCC. For every tonne of waste that we take from previously going to the energy from waste facility between Devonport and St Budo, and instead redirect that as food waste to the anaerobic digestion plant at Langage, there's a significant saving per tonnage for us as a local authority. So there's a financial reason for us to be doing this as well. Fourthly, the sustainability argument. At that anaerobic digestion plant at Langage, that food waste can be turned into various environmentally positive byproducts, from renewable energy to fertiliser. And one of the reasons why I'm pleased that we've gone with that plant in Langage is it's nearby. Some local authorities transport their food waste quite a few miles to process it. We're doing it very locally, just outside of Plymouth. And finally, it is the single biggest opportunity as an intervention for us to increase our city's recycling rate. So it's something that we'll see a very, very clear data output. We're already seeing that just based on the first phase. But within a year of rollout, we'll see hopefully a difference of between 5 and 8% on our recycling rate. There's various things in the report about why we think we're pleased with how the rollout is going so far. One of those is that the vast majority of the upfront costs have been met by national government external funding. So that's something that isn't falling on council taxpayers, although of course there are revenue implications in the future. The team have successfully procured 10 dedicated collection vehicles, a whole host of caddies and liners, and we've gone through the liners approach initially just to help residents get off the ground with this. There's been a positive participation so far. Of course, that changes based on community. We always knew that was going to be the case. And as a city like Plymouth, we've got a complex range of demographics. And part of the reason why we've also hired a team of recycling officers is to make sure we can get to those communities, to make sure they understand the benefits to them and to the local authority, and to get those positive messages out. I'll leave it there. I'm conscious we don't have a huge amount of time for questions, but myself and the team would be very happy to take any questions or suggestions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor. Much appreciated. Anybody got any questions on the panel at all? Right. Anne Freeman? Okay. Councillor Anne Freeman, sorry.
That'll be me, Chair. Thank you very much. I'm going to keep it extremely brief. My Royal colleague is giving me daggers. I just wanted to say, obviously, Devonport, Devonport were in phase 1 of the rollout for the food waste delivery. We had a really good workshop that we attended with Rachel. When the actual practical rollout came, there were obviously some issues which Kylie was then able to deal with very, very quickly. I actually wanted to take this opportunity, instead of scrutinising and asking awkward questions, but to say thank you to the team for their work in this, for the work that you've done as a cabinet member, but also the team behind the food waste. Just one little thing that I would highlight on a practical level is please do send a reminder out to the food waste guys and ladies who work on the vehicles to, if the wheelie bin's been collected and emptied before they've got there, do just check behind in case the food waste bin is hidden behind that one. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. That's a really good point. One of the challenges, there's a couple of challenges with food waste compared to our other refuse collections. One of those is the caddies is so much smaller. And so depending on where the resident puts them, and you're right, if the other, because we've tried to keep it to the same day to make it as easy as possible, but that can mean that your brown or green bin is collected an hour before your food waste, and if it doesn't go back in the best possible place, then the food waste vehicle might miss it. The other thing is that we know there are some streets where every single resident isn't putting it out, and so that then makes it harder for the vehicles to be keeping an eye on those houses that are doing it more often. If there is ever a missed collection, what I'd encourage your residents to do is to click the link on the website, and what that does is flag in the digital system that the refuse collectors are looking at, so that next week they'll be particularly careful with that. But generally we have an incredibly low missed collection rate, and like you say, the team have done a really good job just to try and learn from some of those teething issues when they occur.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And the next question now is from Councillor Lewis Allison.
Yeah, thank you. Very quickly. I'd just like to understand, I think you've done a very great job in terms of rolling out this, especially in trial areas. I think the communication's been really good. I think you've done a fantastic job of getting the message out there, so I think that's been done really well. However, we're still quite a big chunk behind the target. What sort of level of confidence do you and the team have that that's achievable? And also in the financial risk element of this report, it's saying that the risk is that it's not funded in 27-28. Does that mean you need to hit that target in order for it to be financially viable, and we'll have to find the gap if it's not that percentage, or is it funded in a different way?
No, so this will 100% be continuing. It's a statutory service, and it will be continuing. There's complex funding mechanisms associated with it, so it's perhaps not captured in the whole report. But to put it as briefly as I can, there were 3 separate pots of funding that we had from national government to fund it. Initially was to do with the capital procurement. Second one was transitional funding. The third one was the new burdens funding linked to revenue. And there's an estimated amount of money which we need to secure from another part of the council to cover the projected revenue shortfall. And also the money that we get from the government has been rolled into our wider council grant from the government. And so it's just making it very clear for accounting purposes exactly what is covered. But is there anything more you want to add to that, Andy?
Yeah, it's as part of the medium-term financial plan, we'll be bringing forward what we call a growth item, so where there's additional money than what was originally in the base budget. So that's all that refers to, but they're expecting it, that the accountants know that that's coming. It's just the way that the accounts work. So, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yep.
Just a couple of questions, please. Do you know what the difference is in terms of the cost per tonne to the council of a tonne of food waste going to Langage, or a tonne of brown bin waste going to the tip?
I believe it's approximately a third.
Yes. A third, and overall, in terms of the annual cost to the council of waste disposal, are you able to put a figure on that? If not tonight, that's fine. Yeah, that's really helpful. That's really helpful. Thank you. I noticed also there's the report describes a recycling education program. Just wanted to ask a couple of points about that. Do any of you have any theories about why Plymouth is stuck at around about 33-34% recycling?
So up and down the country, you'll see that, particularly in cities, that there is a more difficult challenge. And also you'll see that within Plymouth, and we know that, don't we, from our campaigning. And so what we're doing with our 4 new recycling officers to make sure we get to those communities where it can most make a difference. Food waste is already making a difference, so we think there's been already an over 1% increase in the recycling rate just based off phase 1. So we're already seeing that statistical difference. And what we're also doing with the team is to look at other interventions we could do in other parts of waste services to bring that up in a tangible way too. But Rachel, you've been really leading the behaviour change side of things. Is there anything you wanted to add on that side?
As the reason why, is that the answer?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not unique in that way in terms of our rates being stagnant. It is the same pretty much up and down the country. We do have some areas that are great, like Wales, for example, where recycling rates are 65%. And as Councillor Borisdale has said, it's about behavioural change. And what we are trying to introduce as a service is a holistic way of interacting with people so that they start to own recycling for themselves and they start to understand the reasons why we're doing that. And it's kind of, we're using all the channels available to us to do that, whether it's going to the schools, school assemblies, whether it's having gazebos in fairs like we were at the Flavour Fest, Hope Festival, everywhere where we can. We try to reach all of the demographics that we can and talk to them in their language and try to answer the questions so they see the bigger picture.
I was interested in the report describing that you've got this education plan that you're planning to roll out properly. I think it's the autumn, isn't it? It just described the plan. We weren't able to sort of see anything about it or understand the particular kind of strategies about it. I wondered whether, if not tonight, if we could see a bit more of that.
Yeah, so I'm happy to share with you the behavioral change strategy that I put in place when I first started. There was a lot of maybe 3 to 4 months research put into it, looking at empirical studies that other organizations have done, look at what works, not just in the United Kingdom, but in Europe as well. And all of that has been put together to inform the behavioral change and engagement strategy and plan. So from the strategy, we have the plan that we've been carrying out over the last maybe 6 months, right. And we've engaged about 9,000 people. So I'm talking here about meaningful conversations with people rather than footfall. We do target areas where there's high footfall, but also small community events. So there is definitely a plan, and it has been successful, in my opinion, but I'm biased.
Well, I'd be interested to see it. I don't know if other members of the committee would be.
Share that with you.
Because I suspect as the food waste programme rolls out over the course of the next sort of 12 months, you guys will be coming back again, and we may be revisiting recycling levels again, Chair. So perhaps if that could be in action, if that report could be shared.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is that all the questions? No? Councillor Coker.
Rachel, when we did Devonport, we had initial problems or more difficult problems with tower blocks and blocks of flats. What are the learning curves from that? And as we go to phase 3 or 4, in Devonport, we've got a huge, large amount of 4-storey, 5-storey, 10-storey flats. And actually, it was the flats in our first area that caused us most problems. So what were the learning curves from the way we did it?
As far as flats are concerned, it's almost a given that you're going to have low participation for various reasons. And what we have done is to partner up with the housing associations. So Plymouth Community Homes is a partner with us, and they help us with communicating through newsletters, through allowing us to put posters up in those blocks of flats. And we're working our way through trying to understand whether those actions are making a difference. So if we're having, for example, a 60% participation rate in regular houses, we're expecting 20 to 25% less in those blocks of flats. Some of it is socio-demographic reasons, but what we're doing to evidence that is to really hit the flats hard through the housing associations and use their channels to communicate with people.
I think it's also just important to note, particularly for those of you who have those different housing types within your wards, that some of it needs to be slightly bespoke arrangements. So it won't be the case that in flats that they would have the 2 caddies per individual flat, littering up their stairwell areas. And so some of those have communal arrangements agreed. And obviously with a new service being rolled out in a relatively short period of time to a city of over 250,000 people, there will be some arrangements that need to be tweaked, which will take a little bit of time. So, to give one example, in my ward, where it wasn't a big block of social housing, but it was a house that had been split up into flats. And so originally they were given caddies, but not all of them were using it. It was getting quite messy out the front. And so the team were, within a couple of weeks, able to deliver a communal bin to that particular house so that it was less messy and more accessible for the residents there. But those bespoke arrangements do take time, of course, as well.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. Two more questions and that, so I can't take any more questions after these two. Councillor Sashi, have a worry? Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you. First of all, this is absolutely incredible. I have a quick question on the usage after anaerobic digestion has happened. A portion of this going to energy, so being burnt, which is, net zero, but arguably what a better use of that would be is for the fertilizer, right? In terms of that, once it's been processed. I just kind of wanted to know if you guys had an oversight into the proportion of the food waste that's being used for either fertilizer or as energy. And a secondary question on, is that managed by language? So once the food waste has occurred and you have the fertilizer, is it being fed into local farmers, or is that just language's responsibility to disperse?
So happy to take those. So I guess from a sustainability point of view, it's worth seeing it in a bit of a hierarchy sense. So previously, food waste would have ended up in landfill, releasing methane into the environment, and then taking decades to rot down and releasing really awkward stuff that's getting into waterways and all kinds of things. Then you've got the energy from waste, which is what we currently have between Devonport and St Budo, and the opportunity from that is to get heat that can then go to the dockyard. Again, not great from an emissions point of view, but in my opinion, anaerobic digestion is the best way that we have within our current technology to dispose of food waste. The best way, of course, would be that none of us had food waste, but obviously we know that's not the case, and there will be some items that can't simply be, sort of people who eat meat, for instance, chicken bones, for instance, not something you put in your compost bin. But that's done in an incredibly controlled environment, so that rather than it being released into the atmosphere, that can be done to get into those byproducts. I don't have the percentages in terms of what goes to fertilizer and renewable energy, but we might be able to get some more detail on that for you.
Happy with that? Thank you very much. Last question from Councillor Kathleen Watkin, please.
We've had 2 rollouts in my ward, which have been fairly successful, apart from the odd misbin. But the question I have is, when we went on the workshop, we were informed that council was going to have the option of going to Langage to see the whole process. And I wonder if that could be arranged, please.
Yes, I've got that in plan within the next maybe 4 weeks or so. I just wanted to get more councillors to be involved and engaged, and so definitely that will happen in the next 4 weeks. We'll look forward to seeing you there.
Hope you don't mind the smell.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for your time. Yeah. All right, just 2 seconds. I'd like to propose that we also add a recommendation for a cabinet member and officers return at appropriate time in the programme once sufficient digital collection rates, tonnage and financial savings can be analysed to enable scrutiny to consider the impact of the programme on budgets and environmental factors. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Averbury. All those against? All those for, sorry. All those against? Any abstentions? Does anyone have any further recommendations they'd like to propose? No? Okay, moving on to item 10. I'm going to pass this over now to Charlie, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just quickly run through this because it's in all the agenda packs. So at the moment, for the work programme for the 21st of October, we have housing and homelessness on there, as well as the homelessness action plan, crisis resilience fund housing payments, play parks maintenance fund, and city car parking. As well as that, we're always happy to take recommendations for other topics of scrutiny. Thank you.
Chair, sorry, can I just put forward a proposition as an agenda item for future meetings, as Charlie's just outlined, which is HMOs and the operations of the HMO licensing system enforcement. Perhaps Charlie, is it worth me just giving a summary to you direct? Thank you. No, please, no apologies, Chair. You
I was also going to say that following the school parking work that's going to be done this term, I would have thought that that is likely to be brought back to, would that seem to be, it's likely to be brought back to December? Does that seem that should be added? And the other thing I was going to ask is having been in committee just recently, is there at some point that we should be having some sort of consideration of the implications for us in terms of local government reorganisation? Should that be an item that actually comes to this committee in any way whatsoever?
Sorry, I think that would sit more within Scrutiny Management Board's
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Right, so thank you for that. We will note the work programme. Item 11 on the action log for the Housing and Community Services work programme. Charlie, could you run through the action log, please?
Perfect, thank you very much, Chair. So we've got 2 items on the action log at the moment, and they're both down as complete. So one is for community safety, which was around information around links relating to crime reporting routes. And the second one was around the Renters' Rights Bill, where the Cabinet member was going to write to the Government Minister, sort of seeking clarity around that. And it's in law now, so yeah, they're both complete.
Sorry, Chair. I did have my hand up earlier on when we were going through this. Can I just confirm that play park maintenance actually shouldn't come to this one? It should go to the other one? The growth and infrastructure, because it's a big project with a lot of money that actually.
Through you, Chair. From memory, the terms of reference for this panel include parks. It doesn't specify whether that is country parks or play parks. So parks comes under us, and that's why I've put it here, but we can pick that up at Scrutiny Management Board and decide best place if that's what's felt.
Elliot, if it assists, I've got the Constitution in front of me. It says parks including playgrounds and green spaces. So,
thank you.
So I think it must include. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much. We will note the action log. Is it an important question? Can it be really, really quick?
This is any other business, so I don't know, a point at the end. Oh, and then, okay, in which case, if this is the end of the meeting, yes. I just want to say, yeah, my name is Councillor Sahi Aruri, just for everyone to be clear, because I know people have been struggling with pronunciation, but I am a member of this council as everyone else. So I'd really appreciate if everyone could take the time to learn my name, Sahi Aruri. Thank you.
I apologise if I've got your name wrong this evening, okay?
No worries.
Thank you very much. I'll endeavour to try and learn it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Chair, just one more thing. I think you're about to wrap up the meeting, so can I just make a point of saying thank you for chairing tonight. You're a new councillor. You've not been a chair of a committee before. Thank you for your chairing, and thank you for giving everybody a chance to speak in what's been quite a long meeting. So I just wanted to highlight that. Thank you.
Can I also just say, no, you probably won't believe this. I only got out of hospital 2 days ago, so I've been in for like a mini stroke, and I didn't think I was going to get here today. Yeah, so I've done even better than I thought I was going to do. Thank you very much, everybody. You've been an absolute blessing, and I hope you've enjoyed this evening. And onward and upward. This brings us to the end of today's meeting. I would like to say thank you to all of today's panel. Thank you very much, panel. All the cabinet members, thank you, cabinet members, and all your officers for your contributions as well. Thank you, everybody. Have a